This passage is based on research on crows. Based on the findings of the research, the researchers came up with certain comments on research, the way it is carried out, research on animal behavior and research on human behavior. Quickly, let's summarize the passage. Several years ago, Christian Rudds started to wonder whether he was giving his crows enough credit. Rudds, a biologist at the University of St Andrews in Scotland, and his team were capturing New Caledonian crows and challenging them with puzzles made from natural materials before releasing them again. So, this was an experiment on crows. They used natural materials. They used to capture these crows, put whatever, study them in some experiments, and release them again. In one test, birds faced a log drilled with holes that contained hidden food. They could get the food out by bending a plant stem into a hook. If a bird didn't try within 90 minutes, the researcher removed it from the data set. So one of the experiments involved giving a log full of food, and the crow could get to the food by using some stem to pull out the food. Now, if a crow did not use this method within 90 minutes of being shown the log, it was removed from the data set. But he soon began to realize he was not, in fact, studying the skills of New Caledonian crows. He was studying the skills of only a subset of New Caledonian crows that quickly approached a weird log they had never seen before because they were especially brave or reckless. So the crows in that place, so what he realized is he is not studying the behavior of all crows. By removing the thing in 90 minutes, what is he doing? He is actually only studying the behavior of those crows which approached something they had never seen before. So basically, he was studying the skills of only a subset of New Caledonian crows that quickly approached a weird log they'd never seen before, maybe because they were especially brave or reckless. So even so many crows were there in their experiment, he only was studying those which approached the log. The rest they were removing from the data set. So in actuality, he is not studying New Caledonian crows in totality. He is only studying the subset which approached the log, maybe because it was especially brave or especially reckless. The team changed their protocol. They began giving the more hesitant birds an extra day or two to get used to their surroundings, then trying the puzzle again. It turned out that many of these retested birds suddenly started engaging. They just needed a little bit of extra time. Now, when this 90-minute thing was not done, when the crows which did not approach the log in the first 90 minutes were given more time, they started engaging. They started trying to get the food. Right? So, what does this experiment really prove? What conclusions did they draw from this? Scientists are increasingly realizing that animals, like people, are individuals. They have distinct tendencies, habits, and life experiences that may affect how they perform in an experiment. You are thinking of of one crow as representative of all crows, of one dog representative of all dogs. But he says animals, like people, are individuals. They have distinct tendencies. Different from one another. Life experiences that may affect how they perform in an experiment. That means some researchers argue that much publicized research on animal behavior may be biased. We have so much research on animal behavior, maybe most of it is biased. Why? Studies claiming to show something about a species as a whole, that green sea turtles migrate a certain distance, or say how something else respond to the song of a rival, may say more about individual animals that were captured or housed in a certain way, or that share certain genetic features. It doesn't say anything about the entire group. One sea turtle, how much distance it goes, does not, according to this research, really reflect how all the sea turtles would behave. Therefore, that's a problem for researchers who seek to understand how animals sense their environments, gain new features, and live their lives. So they are individuals, and so far research has tended to generalize experiments on some birds as indicating the behavior of all birds or all animals. The samples we draw are quite often severely biased. That is something that has been in the air in the community for quite a long time. So, the basic case is the samples that you take, the samples are biased, they're not objective, and this problem has existed for a long time. In 2020, Rudds and his colleague Michael Webster, also at the University of St. Andrews, proposed a way to address this problem. How to address this problem of biased samples? They called it strange. Why strange? In 2010, an article in Behavioral and Brain Sciences suggested that the people studied in much of the published psychology literature are weird. You have a lot of experiments in psychology, you have a lot of literature in psychology. The people who are studied in these psychology experiments and the people who feature in the psychology literature are weird. Weird doesn't mean weird in the it's an acronym. It's an acronym for Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies. That means these people are all taken from this group: Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies, which is among the least representative population one could find for generalizing about humans. So, when you're doing research on humans, you're actually taking only this weird set: Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic people. And that subset of people that you are studying in giving all these theories in psychology, they're the least representatives of humans. Researchers might draw sweeping conclusions about human mind when they really have studied only the minds of, say, undergraduates at the University of Minnesota. So they'll study a small group in the University of Minnesota, the weird group, and then draw conclusions about all humanity. That very small sample size, not representative at all, least representative sample size, and draw conclusions about all human beings. A decade later, Rudds and Webster, drawing inspiration from Weird, published a paper in the journal Nature called How Strange Are Your Study Animals? What does strange stand for? Again, it's an acronym. They proposed that their fellow behavior researchers consider several factors about their study animals. What are the factors you study when in an experiment? Social background, trappability and self-selection, rearing history, acclimation and habituation, natural changes in responsiveness, genetic makeup, and experience. All these factors, take these factors into consideration when you research animal behavior. Clear? So basically, it's about research on animal behavior, which, according to the researchers, they say all animal behavior studies so far may have been biased. Why are they biased? Because animals, like human beings, are individuals. There are a lot of factors that you have to take into consideration when you look at an animal's response in an experiment. These factors can be included in the acronym STRANGE. So if you take these aspects into consideration in research, your research will be less biased, and the sample also will be more representative. Clear? Which of the following best captures the main idea of the passage? Rudds and Webster's strange protocol is intended to address the limitations and sample bias of weird research in animal behavior. Do you think this is the main point? Or is it Rudds and his team studied the puzzle-solving skills of New Caledonian crows but realized that their research was limited to a subset of the population, prompting them to develop the strange protocol? Or is it C? The strange protocol proposed by Rudds and Webster aims to account for individual differences in animal behavior and reduce bias in research. The strange protocol proposes that researchers consider factors such as social background, trappability, genetic makeup to account for individual differences in animal behavior. They all sound similar. So let's look at each option and decide which one expresses the main points best. What do we know? Experiments on New Caledonian crows. But in that experiments, they eliminated those crows which didn't respond within 90 minutes. Then they realized doing that was a mistake. Some crows responded within 90 minutes because they were particularly brave or reckless maybe. The others, when they were given a second chance, also responded. Based on this, they said most animal behavior is biased. In which way? That it studies a small sample, doesn't take into account individual differences, and draws generalization. So they came up with, which is similar to what happens in human research, where most of the samples are weird, Western, industrialized, educated, that acronym. And so these people introduced, Rudds and Webster introduced strange, right? Those factors should be taken into account in animal research. This is what we got. So let's look at the first option. Rudds and Webster's strange protocol is intended to address limitations of sample bias of weird. Strange is an animal behavior. Weird research is not an animal behavior. Weird is the problem, or is the acronym for the sample for human behavior. And this sample, he says, the least representative of all samples. So A is incorrect. This protocol was not meant as a replacement for the limitations of weird. Weird is totally different and strange is totally different. Weird is for human behavior. This is the acronym for the sample that is usually studied in human behavior. You mostly all psychology research is based on people from Western societies, which is the least representative. Strange is about factors that have to be taken into account in studying animal behavior, right? So A is out. Rudds and his team studied the puzzle-solving skills of New Caledonian crows. True, realized that their research was limited to a subset of the population, prompting them to develop the strange protocol. But true, they talked about the subset here, looks like a correct answer, but it's just ignoring one fact. The point that Rudds and Webster seem to make is that animals also have individual differences. That part has not been mentioned in B, right? C, the strange protocol proposed by Rudds and Webster aims to account for individual differences and reduce bias in animal research. This seems to be a better answer. This, in fact, is a better answer. It mentions the individual differences along with the bias. The strange protocol proposes that researchers consider factors such as social background, trappability, genetic makeup. That is true, but this is not the main idea of the passage. It only tells you what is the strange protocol, right? It does all this to account for two problems. One is sample bias and second is individual difference. That point has not been mentioned in D. So the correct answer is C. Which of the following, if true, would most weaken the author's opinion? Researchers might draw sweeping conclusions about the human mind when they've really studied only the minds of, say, undergraduates at the University of Minnesota. Right? So this quote has come in the context of research and literature, which is there in psychology, based on that research. What is the author's main argument? That these researchers have taken these weird samples. They've taken only a small set of people and have drawn conclusion about all human beings, despite there being so many differences, individual differences. Correct? So they base generalization based on the least representative samples. That is the author's argument. So how would you weaken it? You will weaken it by saying that this least representative sample, that is the University of Minnesota students, which is a small group in US, if you say, is in some way actually quite a good representative of the entire human population. Then you will weaken it. Look for an option that does that. All right. A meta-analysis of studies on personality studies, that itself shows that it's a meta-analysis, while the passage is showing that a small sample has been generalized to draw conclusion. So a meta-analysis cannot weaken, but let's see what he's saying. A meta-analysis on personality traits found that the results were consistent across different populations, including individuals from non-Western and non-industrialized societies. But that was a meta-analysis. The author is talking about small sample and drawing conclusions about the whole world, especially based on studies of the human mind. It is not about personality traits or a meta-analysis. A study of decision making found that participants from different cultures tended to make similar choices in hypothetical scenarios, suggesting that basic cognitive processes are universal. All right, here you have a study. Decision making participants, you have different cultures, you have people from different cultures, and you have participants from different cultures. And here you find that the results are similar. So the author is saying that you cannot base research on the human mind based on a small sample. You can't draw conclusions. But if you can say there are certain universal characters, there are certain characteristics which are universal, which can be justified with a small sample, you can generalize on the basis of a small sample, then that would weaken it. So B would weaken it. You are taking a study of decision making based on participants from different cultures, and here you have hypothetical situations where they are making similar choices, and the conclusion says that the basic cognitive processes involved are universal. Then the author's argument about individual differences in the mind or cognitive processes is weakened most. Therefore, my correct option is B. Clear? Based on the passage, all of the following, if true, present scenarios where the strange protocol may be least required except. So, the strange protocol is talking about several factors which have to be taken into account, right, when you do animal behavior. Let's quickly look at what are the several factors in the strange protocol. Next line, I think. Yeah, here it is. Social background, trappability, self-selection, rearing history, acclimation and acclimation, getting used to something, and habituation, natural changes in responsiveness, genetic makeup and experience. Now, these are the factors. Question is asking, where will it be least, where will it be least required except? That means a situation where it is required. Where will it be least required except means a situation where it will be required. So you have to find an option where the strange protocol is required. What are you looking for? Strange protocol will not be required in samples which are homogeneous. Similar social background, similar rearing background, similar genetic background, whatever are the factors. So when you find anything which is similar, that is where the factors under the strange protocol will not be as effective. Where there is a lot of variation, that is where strange protocol becomes more relevant. So look at an option which gives more variation. In research on pelican heritability of behavioral traits, as pelican population is genetically uniform. So one of the factors of strange is uniformity is there, may not be that required. At least one factor is less. In researches on octopuses' learning ability, as octopuses show low variation in learning. So there is learning variation is less. One factor of strange protocol is uniform. In research on sticklebacks' behavior when baited in minnow traps, as more active sticklebacks swim into minnow traps, or in research on jumping spiders' interaction with the habitat as the entire species is confined to one place. A, B, and D, there is some uniformity, at least in some factors. Where is there variation? There is variation in stickleback behavior. Some are more active, some are less. Therefore, that is where strange protocol will be required. All right. Okay, next one. According to the passage, Which of the following is not true? Okay, so 3 will be correct, 1 is not correct. That should be easy. Animals, like humans, have individual tendencies. Yes, author has mentioned it. So this cannot be the answer. Research on animal behavior may be biased due to certain factors. Yes, that is why the strange protocol has come in. Strange protocol is a proposed alternative to weird. No, it is not. Weird is the acronym for the biased sample used in human behavioral research, while strange protocol are the factors which affect animal behavior, which have to be taken into account, which were introduced by Ritz and Webster. It is not something that will be the alternative. So, therefore, which is not true is C. Is D correct? The issue of biased samples has been a topic of discussion. Yes, this has been a topic of discussion for a long time. The authors mentioned it. So, the correct answer is C.